Now that you've prepared a skeleton for the game with an entry point, we can start adding GameObject. However, you've probably figured that we'll need different kinds of GameObjects in this game as opposed to just the one that we needed in the previous one. For example, we have a hero character that a player controls, and we have a platform for the hero to stand on. We'll also have obstacles and coins. Let's take a look at what we need to remember for these GameObjects. They're placed on the stage with a position and dimension. We will need to distinguish amongst them so that you know whether the hero is colliding with an obstacle or a coin. You'll also need to present them visually with either shape or image graphics. Although these GameObjects share the same common properties, it's not good to have these properties appear for every kind of GameObject. Fortunately, you can extract common logic into a generic class named GameObject, and all other kinds of GameObjects are inherited from this generic class. Let's see how. Initially, you'll need to create a new file for this GameObject class. So let's create a new empty file named rush-gameobject.js. Inside the file, we have a basic class definition. We'll then draw bitmaps and put shapes inside it. So we'll inherit this class from the container by setting the prototype to be a container instance. If you take a look at the easel.js source code, you'll see that every class has its own initialize method. We better not override it and break its functionality. You have to ensure that the code is initialized in both the classes, that is, in this class and also in the superclass. So we'll reference the container's initialize method with another name, that is container_initialize. Now we're safe to declare our initialize method without worrying about the superclass overriding it. Inside your initialize method, we will call the superclass. We will then call the initialize method from the constructor. Now that we have inheritance set up, you can add the GameObject initialize logic now. We have several common properties that you can add to the GameObject class. Initially, you'll need to know the kind of GameObject, so we'll use a string to represent it. By default, it's just a normal object, so we can give it an object string. Then we have dimensions for the GameObject. By default, their value is 0. The X and Y positions are already inherited from the createJS container class, so you don't need to redefine it here. The next step is to separate each module into its own JavaScript file. Remember to always include the JavaScript file in the index.html document every time you create a new file. Let's save the files and open the index.html file in a web browser. The stage is empty, and we'll make sure that there's no JavaScript error appearing on the console. We've taken the easel.js game boilerplate and ended with a generic class that will be used on every GameObject in this game. You'll now be able to define an abstract class with common properties. In the next video, we're going to use our GameObject class to create a platform object.